The person on your mind right now is thinking about you. Here is the proof. Have you ever been in the middle of an ordinary day, doing something completely unrelated, and suddenly, without warning, one person appears in your mind? Not because you searched for them, not because someone mentioned their name, not because you were trying to remember them, they simply arrived. Maybe it happened while driving home, maybe while making coffee, maybe during a quiet evening when nothing in particular reminded you of them. And for a few moments, it felt as though your mind had pressed pause on everything else. You tried to ignore it. You told yourself it didn't mean anything, yet somehow, days later, it happened again and again. Most people dismiss these moments as overthinking or nostalgia. They tell themselves they are just being emotional, unable to move on, or trapped inside memories that should have faded long ago. But what if that's not the complete picture? What if your mind isn't malfunctioning? What if it's doing exactly what it was designed to do? Psychology has spent decades studying memory, emotional attachment, and the invisible patterns that shape human relationships. While it doesn't claim that every unexpected thought carries a mystical meaning, it does suggest something fascinating. The people who repeatedly return to your thoughts often occupy a unique place inside your emotional world, and understanding why that happens can reveal far more about you than about them. Today, we are going to explore the psychology behind persistent thoughts, emotional attachment, unfinished experiences, and why certain people seem impossible to forget. By the end of this video, you may look at your own memories and perhaps one particular person in a completely different way. The mind doesn't hold every memory the same way. Think about all the people you've met throughout your life: classmates, co workers, neighbors, strangers who briefly crossed your path. Thousands of faces have entered your life, yet only a handful continue to live inside your thoughts. Why? Because your brain isn't a storage unit, it's a survival system. Every single experience is unconsciously evaluated according to one question: does this matter to my future? If the answer is no, the memory gradually fades. You probably can't remember every conversation you had last month. You can't recall every person who smiled at you in a grocery store. Your mind simply lets those experiences go because they carry little emotional significance. But emotionally meaningful relationships are processed very differently. When someone makes you feel deeply understood, when they become part of your happiest memories, or even your greatest heartbreak, your brain creates stronger neural connections around those experiences. This isn't weakness, it's biology. Emotions act like highlighters for memory. The stronger the emotional experience, the stronger the memory becomes. That's why people often remember exactly where they were during life's biggest moments: first love, a painful goodbye, a life changing conversation, or the moment everything changed. Emotion tells the brain, this is important, don't lose it. And your brain listens. Why certain people refuse to leave your thoughts? One of the most interesting ideas in psychology is something researchers often describe as unfinished emotional processing. Our minds naturally seek completion. Think about a movie that ends without explaining the story, or a mystery novel missing its final chapter. Your brain doesn't like unanswered questions. It keeps searching for the missing pieces. Relationships work in much the same way. Sometimes a relationship ends without closure. Sometimes words are never spoken. Sometimes two people simply drift apart without understanding why. Even relationships that continue can leave emotional questions unanswered. Did they really understand me? Did they ever care as much as I did? These unanswered emotional experiences don't simply disappear. Instead, the brain quietly revisits them, not because it enjoys pain, because it prefers resolution. Psychologists often describe this tendency through concepts related to incomplete goals and unresolved emotional experiences. the mind naturally returns to experiences it hasn't fully processed. So, when someone unexpectedly appears in your thoughts, it doesn't automatically mean you're destined to reunite with them. But it may mean your emotional system still considers that relationship personally significant. That's a very different idea. It isn't about obsession, it's about importance. Human beings are wired for connection. From the moment we are born, our nervous system begins learning who feels safe, who provides comfort, and who becomes emotionally important. Over time, those relationships become part of the way we understand ourselves. That's why losing someone or becoming emotionally distant from them can feel surprisingly physical. You don't just miss the person, you miss the emotional experience your brain associated with them, the conversations, the routines, the feeling of being understood, the small moments that quietly became part of everyday life. Your nervous system remembers those patterns even after your circumstances change. This is why a familiar song can instantly transport you years into the past. A particular perfume can awaken forgotten memories. A street, a season, or even the smell of rain can suddenly bring someone back into your mind. Your brain constantly connects present experiences with emotional memories stored in the past. It isn't trying to trap you there, it's simply recognizing patterns. Memory isn't organized like a filing cabinet, it's organized through emotion. And the stronger the emotional connection, the easier it becomes for your mind to revisit it. That doesn't mean you should act on every feeling, nor does it mean the other person is necessarily thinking about you at the same moment. What it does mean is that your mind is reminding you of something that has mattered deeply in your life. Understanding that distinction changes everything. Instead of asking, "Why can't I stop thinking about them?" you begin asking, "What is this memory trying to teach me about myself?" And sometimes that's where the real healing begins. But this is only the beginning, because remembering someone isn't just about memory. It's also about attachment, emotional patterns, and the surprising way our brains continue to respond to people long after they've left the room. In the next part, we'll explore why certain emotional bonds can remain active for years, why some people become psychological anchors in our lives, and how understanding those patterns can help us move forward, not by forgetting the past, but by finally understanding. Have you ever noticed how some people become distant, yet somehow never truly disappear from your inner world? Months pass, sometimes years, your life changes, you meet new people, you build new routines, and yet every once in a while their memory returns with remarkable clarity, as if no time has passed at all. This isn't because your brain is refusing to move forward. In many cases, it's because emotional attachment doesn't simply vanish when circumstances change. Psychologists who study attachment theory explain that close relationships become part of our internal emotional map. The people who consistently provide comfort, excitement, understanding, or even emotional uncertainty can leave lasting patterns in the way we think and feel. In other words, relationships don't just shape our memories, they shape our nervous system. That's why some people are easy to forget, while others continue to influence your thoughts long after the relationship ends. Your brain isn't only remembering the person, it's remembering who you became when you were with them. One of the brain's primary jobs is prediction. To do that, it relies heavily on past experiences. Imagine hearing the first few notes of a song you haven't listened to in years. Before the chorus even begins, your brain already knows what's coming. Relationships work in a surprisingly similar way. If someone played an important role in your emotional life, your brain develops expectations around them: how they laughed, how they comforted you, how they challenged you, even the way they looked at you during certain conversations. Those patterns become deeply familiar. So, when something in your current life resembles those experiences, a place, a scent, a phrase, even the feeling of loneliness. Your brain activates related memories almost automatically. It isn't trying to make you suffer, it's recognizing patterns that once mattered. This explains why memories often arrive unexpectedly, not because they are random, but because something in your present quietly resembles something from your past. Some memories stay alive because they were beautiful, others stay alive because they were incomplete. Think about the conversations you wish had gone differently, the apology you never received, the words you never had the courage to say, the goodbye that never felt like a real goodbye. Our minds naturally seek emotional resolution. When an important chapter closes without clarity, the brain often keeps revisiting it, not to punish us, but to understand it. This doesn't mean you need to reopen every relationship from your past. Sometimes closure comes from another conversation. Sometimes it comes from acceptance. And sometimes it comes from realizing that not every question will receive an answer. That's difficult. But it's also freeing because healing isn't always about changing the past. Sometimes it's about changing your relationship with the past. Here's something many people don't realize. Sometimes the person you keep thinking about isn't actually what you're longing for. Sometimes it's the version of yourself that existed around them. Maybe you felt more confident, more hopeful, more adventurous, more understood, more alive. When relationships become emotionally significant, our identity often becomes intertwined with the experiences we shared. So when the relationship ends, we don't only lose the other person. We temporarily lose the environment where a certain part of ourselves existed. That's why healing can feel confusing. You think you're searching for them, but in reality, you're also searching for yourself. And that's an important distinction. Because if the qualities you miss lived inside you once, they can exist again. Not because someone else gives them to you, because they were always yours. The relationship simply helped reveal them. Many people believe healing means forgetting. Psychology suggests something different. Healthy healing isn't about deleting memories, it's about changing the meaning those memories carry. Think about someone who once broke your heart. Years later, the memory may still exist. But instead of creating overwhelming sadness, it becomes part of your story, something you learned from, something that shaped your character, something that taught you what you value in future relationships. The memory stays, the suffering changes. That's emotional growth. Your goal isn't to erase people from your mind. It's to reach the point where remembering them no longer controls your emotional state. When that happens, memories stop being chains. They become chapters, important chapters, but no longer the entire book. Acceptance is often misunderstood. People imagine it means giving up, settling, pretending something never mattered. It doesn't. Acceptance simply means acknowledging reality without fighting it. Yes, someone changed your life. Yes, they still cross your mind. Yes, what happened mattered. Those statements can all be true, and you can still continue moving forward. Acceptance doesn't erase love, it places it in its proper place, not as something that defines your future, but as something that helped shape the person you've become. There's incredible peace in reaching that point. Because instead of asking, why can't I stop thinking about them? You begin asking, what has this experience taught me about love, loss, and myself? That question opens the door to growth. But there's one final piece that many people overlook. It's not just about why someone keeps appearing in your thoughts, it's about what you're supposed to do with those thoughts. Should you reach out? Should you wait? Should you let go? Or is there another path entirely? One that leads not back to the past, but toward a stronger version of yourself. Now we arrive at the question that almost everyone asks, even if they never say it out loud. If I keep thinking about them, does it mean I should do something? Should you send the message you've rewritten 100 times? Should you call them? Should you tell them how you still feel? or should you keep walking forward and allow the silence to remain? The truth is, psychology can't answer that question for you. No study can tell you whether a particular relationship is meant to continue. No scientific paper can predict how another person feels in this exact moment. What psychology can do is help you understand the difference between acting from clarity and acting from emotion. Because those two things often feel similar, but they lead to very different outcomes. When we experience loneliness, uncertainty, or unresolved emotions, our minds naturally search for relief. Sometimes that relief takes the form of reconnecting with someone from our past. But temporary emotional intensity isn't always the same as genuine readiness. Before making any decision, ask yourself a different question. Am I reaching toward this person because I truly understand what I want or because I want the discomfort to stop? That single question can change everything. The person you are becoming matters more than the person you are missing. One of the greatest misconceptions about love is that another person completes us. It sounds romantic, but psychologically, it creates a dangerous expectation. Healthy relationships don't complete two incomplete people, they allow two whole people to grow together. If you've spent months or years thinking about someone, it's worth asking what those thoughts have been teaching you. Perhaps they've shown you how deeply you're capable of loving. Perhaps they've revealed the kind of communication you need in future relationships. Perhaps they've taught you what emotional safety feels like or what it doesn't. Every meaningful relationship leaves behind lessons. Some arrive wrapped in joy, others arrive disguised as heartbreak, but both have something valuable to offer. The goal isn't to become someone who never feels pain. The goal is to become someone who learns from it without allowing it to define every chapter that follows. It's important to remember something that people often overlook. Feelings are real, they deserve attention, they deserve compassion, but they aren't always facts. Feeling that someone is constantly on your mind tells you something meaningful about your emotional world. It does not by itself tell you what they are thinking, feeling, or experiencing. That's an important distinction. Sometimes people imagine that because a connection felt powerful, both individuals must still feel the same way years later. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay. Real emotional maturity comes from accepting uncertainty without allowing it to control your life. You don't need to invent answers where none exist. You don't need to convince yourself of stories that cannot be verified. Instead, you can honor your experience for what it truly is, a reflection of something that mattered deeply to you. And that alone is meaningful. The quiet strength of letting life unfold there is a kind of strength that rarely receives attention. It isn't loud, it doesn't demand answers, it doesn't force outcomes. It's the strength to let life unfold without trying to control every possibility. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is continue becoming the person you're meant to be. Read the books, travel if you can, reconnect with friends, learn new skills, take care of your body, protect your peace. Build a life so rich with purpose that your happiness no longer depends on whether one person returns. Ironically, this isn't about forgetting them. It's about remembering yourself. Because while you've been wondering whether they still think about you, there's another question waiting beneath the surface. Have you been thinking enough about your own future? That question deserves your attention just as much. The most powerful truth of all. If someone changed your life, you don't need to pretend they didn't. If they helped shape the person you are today, it's okay to acknowledge that. Love, friendship, heartbreak, and loss all leave their fingerprints on us. That's part of being human. But no single relationship gets to write the rest of your story. Every sunrise offers another page, every decision becomes another sentence, every act of courage creates another chapter. The past explains you, It doesn't imprison you. The memories you carry are proof that you lived, that you cared, and that you were willing to open your heart despite the possibility of pain. That isn't weakness. It's one of the bravest things a person can do. Never allow anyone to convince you that feeling deeply is something to be ashamed of. The world often celebrates speed. Move on quickly, forget quickly, replace quickly, but genuine healing has its own rhythm. Sometimes it arrives quietly, sometimes slowly, sometimes in ways you don't even notice until one day you realize the memory no longer hurts the way it once did. That's growth, not because the past disappeared, but because you became stronger than the pain it once carried. Final message so, if someone keeps appearing in your thoughts, don't rush to label yourself as broken. Instead, become curious. Ask what that memory represents. Ask what it taught you. Ask how it has shaped your values, your boundaries, and the person you're becoming. Because every meaningful connection leaves behind something greater than nostalgia. It leaves behind wisdom, if we're willing to look for it. And perhaps that's the real purpose of these unexpected moments. Not to pull you backward, but to remind you how far you've come. Not to keep you trapped in yesterday, but to help you walk into tomorrow with greater understanding, greater compassion, and greater confidence in who you are. The people who pass through our lives may not stay forever, but the lessons they leave behind can guide us for the rest of our lives. If this message resonated with you, let it be more than just another video. Take a quiet moment after this ends. Reflect on the person who came to mind, not with regret, not with longing, but with gratitude for what the experience revealed about your capacity to care, to grow, and to love. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing for more psychology inspired conversations about relationships, emotional resilience, and personal growth. And if someone came to mind while you were listening, share your thoughts in the comments. Your story may remind someone else that they're not alone in what they're feeling. Until next time, take care of your mind, protect your peace, and never stop growing into the person your experiences are helping you become.